I found out my Uncle Maurice was dead because my mom called me and she said, Beverly shot your Uncle Maurice. And I hadn't heard Beverly's name for 15 years. Nada. And so I had no idea, but I only know one Beverly, especially that my mom would be talking to me about. I think when I was in about 6th grade, and they moved apart. My dad lived like across town from us. Well, then at about between this 8th grade and 9th grade year, Dad had a new girlfriend. We went to Dad's on the weekend. And his girlfriend was this tall, skinny, pretty redhead named Beverly. Well, you know, I didn't really like her very much because she was kind of icy. She was very nice, though. There's one specific thing that I can remember. I was always in choir, every musical, every summer stock, every college play, and then we always had dinners and things. Well, there was this real nice, I think it was I don't know, it was a lunch or something, and it was to get money to fund the next year's musical. And so we all had to get dressed up and go to lunch, and the investors would be there, and we'd do a little performance and then have lunch. Well, I didn't have any shoes to wear. And my dad had just got some brand new shoes, and we wore the same size. Well, my dad told me to come by after school and get the shoes. My dad wasn't going to be home. And he called me and told me that his apartment was unlocked. Just go there and get your shoes for your function. Well, I go there to my dad's house, and I go to his closet where his shoes are, where they always have been my whole entire life. I know where my dad's shoes are and aren't. And the shoes were not in the closet. So I started looking around for the shoes. I called my mom. She said, well, keep looking. I called my dad. He said, they're in there. And I was just going through looking. And the next thing I know, Beverly is standing behind me, who doesn't live there. And she goes, what are you doing? I said, I'm here to get my dad's shoes. I have a thing tomorrow. And she said, well, I bought those shoes. And she turned around, slammed the door, and left. And so I called my mom on the phone, not my dad, and told my mom what she had said. And my mom was going through the roof. Well, I guess, I don't know what happened, but then I opened the door, and in the hallway were the shoes. So maybe my dad called Beverly, or maybe Beverly changed her mind, knew she shouldn't have did that. But yeah, she took my dad's shoes so that I wouldn't wear them because she didn't buy them for me. I want to also make it very clear that I'm just speaking from my experience. My Uncle Maurice had 2 wonderful children. They're my cousins, Jamal and Layla. I love them. They lost their father. This is ridiculous, and that's a big part of the reason why I'm speaking, because I can't believe that this woman, Beverly, who was my dad's evil girlfriend when I was a little boy, creeped back into my life somehow and killed Jamal and Layla's dad. Like, it's unbelievable. And this was the woman, I mean, that's how I always felt about her. She was a weirdo. She didn't like us. She didn't want us around, and she wanted to control my dad.
In an investigation, when you're interviewing individuals, that when you're watching their body language, you're watching their stories, you're listening to their stories, that it's a piece of a puzzle that you're putting together. Every piece that they give you should fit nicely with the next one if they're telling the truth. It's when the person's lying, because a person cannot remember details of lies. They can remember the truth very well, but they cannot remember the lies. So when you're talking to them, their story won't make sense, and you'll get them to stumble, and they will in turn then start lying again, completely changing the story, which starts telling you these people are not telling you the truth, and you start catching them in lies. I simply asked her, who is Max? And she stated that it was an individual she had met approximately 2 days prior to Mr. Byrd getting killed, and that Max had been telling Beverly that Mr. Byrd was not going to give her money back to her. And so she took Max to Mr. Byrd's house to confront him, because Max can be intimidating, and was going to be able to get the money back for her. The three stories that Beverly had given about how they left the residence was, the first one, she had gotten the passenger seat and Max had driven the vehicle away. The second one was she had driven and Max was in the passenger seat and she had dropped him a few blocks from the house. Then when confronted about not seeing a second person in the vehicle on the video, she gave a third story saying that Max had actually stayed at the residence and walked away from the residence as she was driving off alone in the car. When Beverly McColm was extradited back to Guthrie, Oklahoma to stand trial for the murder of Mr. Byrd, she was in the jail and I had informed her that we had Max in custody. And her response was to simply put her head down, shake her head, and state, "No, he didn't do it. I'll get it set straight." And that was the last time I had spoke with Beverly. An investigation comes together from cooperation from numerous sources. The family being vigilant and being willing to call me with information, the Texas Rangers being able to stop what they're doing at that moment and begin assisting me with only a few minutes' notice. The local agencies going and working around the clock several days to process scenes, to stand guard. All of these things come together, and that is what solves these particular type of crimes. It's one of those, not only because it happened in my hometown, but because it's one of those that I still remember what I was doing when I got the call. I still remember what happened through every step of the process. You never forget any type of these type of crimes that you deal with. I mean, every one of them, there's a piece that sticks with you on every single crime that I've worked over my 25 years.
Well, it had quite an impact due to the fact that, like I said, it's a very nice neighborhood. It's next door to a church, and then there's a church in the next block. And we never had any problems. I used to live in that house myself, and we never had any problems like that. So I was very sure that none of the people, in that neighborhood would do something like that. So it was kind of a shock to hear about an experience like that.
OSBI alerted me and said, we have someone in custody and they're from Texas. And so obviously that eliminated a lot of thought process of someone being local, someone in your church, someone that you go to school with, something like that. So it was good to know that the person was caught and that there wasn't a possible suspect out there in the streets of Guthrie or around children, around school. There's churches nearby.
I found out that Beverly has been was charged with first-degree murder, and then took the plea of second-degree murder, and was given a sentence of 40 years, and 30 years of that is suspended for good behavior. So that means that 10 years and she's out. I think that's our judicial system, how it works. Now, if I think that the family probably doesn't feel good about that, because it's closer to them. Do I think it's right? No, I don't think it's right. But I gotta trust in our system. I mean, I wouldn't do this job if I didn't. Sometimes there's good decisions and I don't want to say bad decisions, but very controversial decisions that, but that's our system.
One of the things you learn on patrol really quickly is don't look into what, someone else does with your case. You do the best job that you can, and then send that information up to the prosecutor, and then there's a jury that makes that decision. However, it is disappointing when, and frustrating at times, when you learn that, someone who takes someone's life, they're no longer there. They no longer can talk with family members. They no longer can, be a part of any grandkids' lives. They no longer can do anything that we sometimes take for granted because we have the ability to do that. When you learn that someone spends 10 years for taking someone's life, that can be very frustrating at times.
When you have a particular situation such as a murder, there's just not one victim. You always have the family of that victim. You also have the family of the perpetrators that are also victims. You've got the first responders that respond to these things over and over and see it every day. You have the hospital staff that works on these individuals. You have the district attorneys, the attorneys. You have victims in so many different avenues that stem from one action that you can't even begin to count how many victims there are when you have one victim.
It's just horrifying to me that she shot this guy, 3 times? 4 times in the back? And I know, anyone could figure out just from watching the show, he was running to get his gun. She would have been dead in this whole situation too. So there was no good outcome in this situation. And and the main thing to me is just knowing that she's sitting somewhere. Granted, like I said, she broke the law. She deserves to pay for breaking the law. But it just saddens me to no end because it's just not the person I knew.
Let me say this. When someone that's as great as Maurice was is killed or leave this earth, it is a loss, it's a tragedy for all humanity because there's so many things that he could have brought about to help. He could have helped to bring about. He was, like I said, he was quite a human being. He was close to being a genius. Short of his small faults, he was a genius, as far as I'm concerned.
Just